child girl named Edith states in the opening of the movie that ghosts are real, in the form of souls or humans. After it, she starts telling her story. The period in 1887 during which Edith lost her mother at the age of 10 is depicted. While Edith was sleeping at night, a dark shadow resembling her mother's spirit appeared to her. She asks her to be aware of Crimson Peak, but she gets scared of her mother and hides her face. The story takes place 14 years later, when Edith has grown older by 24 years and is the daughter of a businessman. Edith enjoyed writing, and she was currently working on a novel that she intended to publish. There she meets her childhood friend who was a doctor, but Edith meets the publisher and he doesn't like the novel, as many souls were mentioned in it, and he says to write a romantic novel while leaving ghosts. "I will publish it and the people will like it." Now reaching home, she tells this to her father. He gives her a pen as a present to write the novel. Edith takes it but says, "Now I will not write the novel with a pen, and I will type it," and then starts typing while sitting in her father's office. Meanwhile, a boy named Thomas arrives and says, "I come here to meet your father," but she leaves while asking him to wait, but Thomas appreciates her novel to see it. Edith feels happy. Edith's father arrives and Thomas tells him that he is working on a project and in search of a businessman who will invest money in his project, and he is here to talk to him about it. Then he does a meeting with Edith's father and the other businessmen and shows them his project, which was a machine. The process of digging can be done through it, but Edith's father denies his offer and insults him. She says this project failed at many places and was also rejected. "We know, and now you have brought it here." After it, Edith's father was getting ready to go to a party and Edith was also with him. She says to her father, "You didn't do good to Thomas," and insulted him for no reason. "I was feeling he is a capable human and can do something good," but her father says, "I don't like Thomas. That's why I can't invest my money in his project to be wasted." Meanwhile, Edith's friend comes to pick them up, and they leave, but Edith didn't go to the party and was in her room working on a novel. Suddenly, the door of her room opens automatically and she again sees her mother's ghost outside. She shuts the door being scared, but even then her mother comes inside while crossing the door, and again says to Edith to do what I am saying and be aware of Crimson Peak. Edith doesn't understand what she wants to say, but she gets scared, and then her servant arrives and tells her that a man named Thomas come to meet you. She meets him and Thomas asks her to go to the party. They both go to that doctor's party. Thomas's sister was also there, and here it was clear that he likes Edith. He asks her to dance with him and Thomas's sister plays piano and they start dancing. The next morning, Edith's father calls a man who was a detective and he asks him to bring details of Thomas and his sister. Edith goes to meet her doctor friend where he shows her a few things and asks her to be aware of Thomas and his sister. They are not good people. It is shown in the next scene that Edith goes to meet Thomas and his sister to a park. Thomas's sister takes him aside and says Edith isn't a good choice and I don't like her. Thomas says, "Don't think useless and give me your ring." She gives him her ring while saying that she wants it back. He makes his sister understand to be hopeful that they will be successful. On another side, the detective gives Edith's father a file in which there were the details of Thomas and his sister. Her father arranges a party at home and invites everyone. Thomas was about to propose Edith, but her father arrives and asks Thomas to come in his room along with his sister because he has to talk to them. They reach his room and Edith's father says, "I discovered everything about you too. You are not good people, so leave my daughter, otherwise, I will tell her your truth." He says while giving them a check that "You are greedy, I know, so keep this check. Leave in the morning train, but yes, leave after breaking my daughter's heart." After it, before starting the food, Thomas tells everyone that he is leaving tomorrow and Edith feels bad to hear it. That's why she leaves. Thomas approaches her and says, "You don't know what love is. You don't know what happens in love when the heart breaks, you don't know. My heart will break while living with you, and yes, write scary useless novels while leaving romantic ones." Edith becomes furious hearing this and slaps him. The next day, Edith's father was doing shave in the washroom, but a stranger comes and holds him from behind. He strikes his head with the wash basin repeatedly. He ends him. On another side, Edith gets a letter from Thomas writing that he didn't said anything with his own at night. Her father asked him to say this because of my poverty. He wants me to break your heart. I know my heart also broke due to it, but even then I will always keep loving you. Reading this, she immediately moves to Thomas's hotel but discovers he has left in the morning. She becomes sad to hear it. She starts weeping, but then Thomas comes in front of her and tells his sister has left, but he didn't. He says, "How can I go while leaving you?" They both express their love. Meanwhile, the lawyer arrives and tells Edith that her father is no more. He died because of an incident. Edith gets broken and starts crying inconsolably, and Edith marries Thomas after burying him. Then they move to England where Thomas lives. He lives here in an old palace. Thomas makes Edith meet his servant when they reach home, and the servant says, "I know, sir, she is your wife. And it's been a long time that you are married," and Edith becomes surprised to hear this. Thomas takes Edith inside while ignoring him. The palace was old from inside, even its roof and floor were broken. Edith was standing and watching the palace when she felt someone calling her from behind her. She goes to check and finds a lady moving up through lift. She tells Thomas about it, but he ignores her and says, "This is your illusion, and listen to me, never go to the basement." Meanwhile, Thomas's sister comes and meet them. Edith asks for the house keys, but she refuses to give her. Now, while taking a shower, Edith sees a shadow. A terrible ghost is shown behind her when she was returning, and it disappears when she sees it. Thomas offers her tea when she comes out, and he has mixed something in it. She hears music while sleeping. She moves to check and finds Thomas's sister playing piano, and she shows her the library and her mother's picture. Then she asks Edith to stay at distance from Thomas and take care of herself. Edith becomes surprised to hear this. Why is she saying this? On another side, the doctor finds the checkbook of Edith's father and discovers that he gave Thomas the last check, due to which he suspects Thomas. Edith moves to Thomas where he was working. They were together, and Thomas's sister arrives. She serves tea to Edith, in which she has mixed something. Now at night, Edith feels sudden belly pain while sleeping, and she doesn't find Thomas when she awakes. She moves to find him and finds a cupboard in which there was a box, and when she opens it, there were a few tapes. Suddenly, a ghost comes out while bursting the earth that was looking terrible, and Edith gets scared to see it. Now to escape, she moves to the basement through the lift, and there she finds a huge box written Enola on it. But it was locked, and Thomas's sister has its key. The next day, Thomas was working on his machine, and Edith arrives and starts telling him the yesterday night incident, but he doesn't listen to her. To avoid her questions, he willingly places his hand in the machine and tells Edith while she is applying a bandage to his hand. "My machine takes at red sand, due to which the snow also turns red. That's why the land here is called Crimson Peak." Edith becomes astonished to hear this and was shocked because she remembers what her mother's soul said. She was asking her again and again to be aware of Crimson Peak. On another side, the lawyer calls the doctor to meet and says Edith asked me to send her property in England where she is living with Thomas. The doctor says, "I suspect Thomas, so just wait for some time." Hearing about suspicion, the lawyer tells him about the detective and asks him to meet the detective if he feels anything wrong because he knows about Thomas. Edith was sleeping and again sees a soul in her dream. Due to it, she gets scared and awakes. She sees that Thomas wasn't on the bed with her today and feels like the soul is in her room. She says, "If you are here in real, so touch my hand and let me feel your presence." As she says this, the soul makes her fall down while holding her hand. She hears a strange voice from the washroom and sees a weird scene when she goes there to check. That a soul is in the bathtub and there was a knife stabbed in her head. The soul gradually moves to Edith and says, "Leave from here and only you can in him or her." Meanwhile, she hears Thomas. As she was scared, she runs to him and tells him everything that happened to her. Hearing her, Thomas's sister says, "There is nothing like this and it will be your bad thought." Later, Thomas's sister says, "Was she talking about Mother's soul? And how she can know about Mother?" "Well, whatever it is, we have to make her sign the property papers soon." The next day, Thomas takes Edith to the post office and there were 2 letters for her. And she keeps it. When they were leaving, there was the news that there is prediction of a strong storm. That's why they spend a night in the room of the post office. The doctor takes Thomas's address from the hotel. And he also meets the detective who tells the doctor while giving him a file that Thomas is already married. That's why Edith's father didn't want them to get married. Edith and Thomas return home after spending a night. His sister asks Edith, "How was the night?" Edith says, "It was nice, we were together for the first time." But hearing this, Thomas's sister becomes furious. Then she changes the topic and says, "Actually, I was concerned about you and I got bored without you, that's why I asked." She also sees her letters that she brought from the post office, but Edith says, "My belly is aching." Hearing this, she starts making tea for her. Edith sees her keys and she takes that key out on which Enola was written. She also takes the letters and then reads the lawyer's letter in her room that was about bringing her money here. She was about to sign it but then sees the other letter and discovers after opening it that it is for Enola. Then she moves to the basement and opens the box with the key written Enola on it. She finds tapes and 3 files on which the name of 3 countries and ladies were written. Edith remembers her father said Thomas find out the businessmen of those countries for her project. There she sees the well of red liquid, but she comes upstairs with the files while ignoring it. Thomas's sister sees the keys and the Enola's key was missing and suspects Edith has taken the key. She calls her and moves to her room, but Edith comes to her room and pretends to be sick. Then she asks Thomas's sister to bring water and Thomas's sister willingly places the keys and leaves. Getting a chance, Edith places Enola's key back in the keys. His sister sees the keys and understands seeing Enola's key. That Edith has known many things. Edith hears the tape and also sees the files. Here, she discovers that Thomas married 3 ladies before her and one of them was named Enola. Then, Thomas and his sister handed them a poison tea that caused people to die gradually and at various times. It was the same tea that was also given to Edith. Suddenly, Edith's mouth starts bleeding. She panics after knowing all this and tries to run from there, but there was snowstorm outside. That's why she couldn't leave, and the poison was also affecting, due to which she gets faint and falls there. She awakes in the next scene after hearing the voice of Thomas's sister who brought food and tea for her. But Edith refuses to have tea and she forcefully makes her eat food. Thomas arrives after a while and forbids Edith to take tea. Later, he goes to his sister and asks her to stop all this, otherwise, she will die. I took pity on her. "I can't support you in all this further," his sister says. "You will stop her to have tea, but I have given her pigeon and food this time. We have to do this, otherwise, everyone will discover us and we will be hanged." Thomas was concerned about Edith because he was in love with her. After it, that doctor is shown reached England, and even in the storm he leaves to go to their palace. Edith's condition gets worse and she was puking blood. She comes out and sees the soul having a baby in her hand. Edith says, "I know you are Enola, but what do you want from me?" Why you come in front of me again and again?" Hearing it, the soul points towards the side and Edith comes to a room seeing Thomas and his sister close to each other. Because they had a relationship that should not have existed. That's why she became furious when she discovered Edith and Thomas were together. Seeing this scene, Edith becomes shocked and sad. That's why she was leaving. Thomas's sister comes behind her. She forcefully takes the ring off from her hand and falls Edith down while pushing her because now she knows everything. Luckily, she was saved and just becomes injured. Edith awakes in the next scene and finds the doctor in front, who was bandaging her leg and tells her that your leg bone is broken, and Edith tries to tell him everything. But Thomas's sister changes the topic. The doctor doesn't find Edith's ring in her hand and her finger was injured. Thomas's sister has that ring in her hand. And he feels strange seeing this, so he leaves with Edith from there. Thomas's sister stops him and the doctor says, "I know your reality, you are cheap." And he tells Edith that Thomas's sister is so cruel that she has ended her mother. Saying this, they leave, but Thomas's sister attacks him with a knife and holds Edith. She asks Thomas to end the doctor with a knife, but he doesn't want to end the doctor. That's why he stabs the knife in his body, with which he will get injured but will survive. He takes him to the basement and then leaves to save Edith while hiding him there. Thomas's sister takes Edith to a room for signing the property papers, and there she tells her many things. We discover when Thomas's mother discovered about Thomas and his sister's relation, they end their mother. Later, they trap 3 girls to invest money in Thomas's project and end them one by one after getting money from them. They failed thrice because their machine on which they were working didn't work properly ever. After telling all of this, she forces Edith to sign the papers, and then she asks her who ended her father? She says, "I have ended him," but Edith becomes furious hearing this and stabs Ben in her chest to take revenge. Then she runs from there. She was coming upstairs through lift and meets Thomas, who says, "Trust me, I love you. And I have done all this on my sister's saying." Then he asks her to go to the basement to the doctor because he is alive. After it, he moves to his sister and burns the property papers and requests his sister not to end Edith. And we 3 will move far while leaving this house and will live happily. But hearing this, she asks, "Do you love Edith?" On it, he says yes, but she becomes furious and attacks him with a knife and finally, ends Thomas. She regrets after rending him and was enraged. That's why she moves behind Edith to end her. And there was a fight between them. Edith comes downstairs to her doctor friend while escaping from her. Thomas's sister was also behind her and takes a huge knife out with which he ended her mother. As she was about to attack her, Edith comes out while escaping from her. There was a competition between them. Meanwhile, Thomas's soul arrives, and seeing him, Thomas's sister becomes emotional and starts weeping. And getting a chance from it, Edith attacks her with a shovel and ends her while attacking her repeatedly. The story then returns to the point where Edith stated that ghosts exist in reality. Then she leaves from there with her doctor friend. After it, the soul of Thomas's sister gets stuck with other souls in that old palace. Because she never wanted to leave that place, we see that Edith, she named the book Crimson Peak. This concludes the movie story.